What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Final Fantasy State of the Format Address episode. So, this is the big one. You know, I've been jamming drafts all week long. I feel like I've got a really good handle of what's going on in the format. A ton that I'm excited to talk about, by the way. I've really been looking forward to recording this episode, really looking forward to just talking about the nitty-gritty of what's going on here. I think it's a really exciting, deep, interesting format. If you haven't joined us for one of these episodes before, the long and short of it is there as much info about the format that I can cram into an hour runtime. We're going to be talking about big picture thoughts, individual cards, archetypes, so much to talk about, so let's just jump in. So we're going to start with big picture thoughts, and my overall broad take on the format, kind of the number one thing that's framing it for me right now, is it's hella balanced. Like, this is one of the most balanced formats I can remember in recent years. There's really not one archetype that's way better or way worse than the others. Obviously, you know, in any Magic format, there's always going to be some archetypes that are a little bit better, a little bit worse. But I think across the board, they really nailed it with the colors, the archetypes. I just feel like this format is a playground, really like a sandbox, basically, where when I click join a draft on Arena, I'm not really hoping to be anything in particular. I'm very much just looking to open my pack, take the best card, see what direction the cards that I open and get past lead me. And yeah, that's really exciting. That's really what I've enjoyed about the format. And I know for a lot of people, that's a really big selling point on formats, right? Just like, this is a balanced format. It's no fun when one color is so much better than the others, or, you know, two colors kind of suck, or there's like 4 failed archetypes. So if you're a lover of balance, if you're a lover of just being able to kind of draft what you want to draft, not have to feel like, oh, I have to draft a over-the-top multicolor deck, or I have to draft a 2-color aggro deck, you know, Tarkir. It's kind of the opposite Tarkir in a lot of ways. This is the format for you. I really feel like there's so much to explore, so much to discover. A few other things that I've really liked about this format, there's tons of overlapping synergies between the archetypes. It really doesn't feel like you need to draft on rails. It doesn't feel like, well, I'm doing this one thing, I take the cards that say that one thing. It really feels like you can get a lot of weird synergies that you might not have expected just looking at the cards. Just you see the cards together and you're like, oh, that actually plays pretty well with this card, even though I didn't expect it to. I think a lot of the individual cards, they did a good job of making them play well in multiple archetypes. I also feel like there's really not a lot of filler in the packs. You know, I open my pack and I go, yeah, there's 7, 8, 9 cards that are pretty darn good here. There's like 3 or 4 cards that I'd be happy to first pick. When I get to pick 7, 8, 9, there's still like 3 or 4 cards, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good card. I'm happy to add that to my deck. So yeah, just the cards and archetypes being pretty balanced, the fact that there's not a lot of filler cards, the fact that there's a lot of mechanical overlap and a lot of synergies that are fun to explore, really make for a format that I think is ripe for exploration. And the fact that it is so balanced means that a lot of what we're going to talk about today is a little bit less prescriptive, like, you should do this, you know, this archetype's good. Sometimes in these State of the Format Address episodes, I kind of say, yeah, you know, on week 1 of the format where not everybody knows what's going on, you should just draft red-white, or you should just draft, you know, one of these 2 archetypes. I don't feel that way today. So today's episode is going to be a lot more descriptive rather than prescriptive. It's going to be a lot more pointing out synergies and pointing out overlaps of cards that are kind of non-obvious, pointing out some individual cards that are better than they look. Next big picture point to talk about is the summons, the Saga Creatures. And I'd say the first thing that comes to mind with these, they're good. They've been really good, and they performed well. They go well in multiple decks. They have synergies in the format. There's a few exceptions, certainly, and we're going to actually cover all of the summons individually in a few minutes here. There's not that many of them, so I figure why not just go through them. But just to start with some broad points about them, one of the really interesting things about them for me has been the gameplay, and just figuring out with each individual summon and each game state, should you trade off your creature right away? You know, maybe you feel like you've got enough value and you're like, okay, I should trade here. Should you wait the full duration of the saga and, you know, get your full value on the saga? There's not really guidelines I can give you because each saga plays out pretty differently, but just something to think about. Something I feel is really giving texture to the gameplay. Something to note about these sagas, which it seems to be a bit unintuitive to people, is that when the last chapter of your saga triggers, which is going to be in your main phase, by the way. I know there's some confusion. Some people thought this would have happened in your upkeep, which it doesn't. These trigger on your main phase. So last trigger goes on the stack, or last chapter goes on the stack. You have a window to respond to that while your saga is still in the battlefield. And on Arena, you are going to have to go into full control for this, or else it just sacrifices right away. But this is relevant for a few reasons. The one that comes up mainly, I found, is to sacrifice your saga for value. in response to it getting sacrificed. So, for example, you have something like Vane's Treachery, which is the 1 in a black instant to give something -2/-2. But if you sack a creature, that creature gets -6/-6 until end of turn instead. So that's a pretty common play pattern. Something like Ambrosia Whiteheart also works well with this. So 1 in a white for a 2/2, flash, comes in, you pick up a permanent you control, return it to your hand. So, you just get to reuse your Saga that was about to die. As far as deck building goes with the summons, the number one thing that I have done to accommodate when I've got, especially the really good summons, is ways to recur them, right? Because unlike a normal creature that might stick around on the battlefield for a while, they do go to the graveyard pretty quickly, especially the 3-chapter ones. So the card Fight On, for example, which is 2 in a black instant, return 2 creatures from your graveyard to your hand, play really well with the summons. And I guess a good rule of thumb for these is the higher the rarity your Saga is, the more I want to play a card like Fight On. Or maybe there's the 5-mana reanimation spell, a card like that, just any way to recur your Saga. The idea, of course, being that the lower rarity ones tend to not be that good to recur because they're not that powerful. They don't often have amazing effects or anything, but a lot of the uncommon ones, and especially the rares, I'm very happy to include some recursion to get more use out of the Sagas. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to quickly go through all of the Sagas. There's only about 15. And we're going to start with the commons here. So there's only 3 common Sagas, a green one, a white one, and a red one. And the best of the bunch here, I think by quite a bit, is the green one, Summon Fat Chocobo. So this is the 4 and a green, 4/4 that enters the battlefield. And the first chapter is you make a 2/2 bird token with landfall. It gets +1/+0. And then chapter 2, 3, 4, it's a 4-chapter saga. All your creatures get trample. And this is more of an aggressive card than a mid-rangey or splashy green deck card, but I found it to be pretty okay there as well. Like, the idea being that when you're an aggressive deck, you really appreciate the trample. You don't care as much that the body goes away in a few turns, because ideally, you've won the game by that point. I have found in my more mid-rangey decks sometimes that matters, where the board's a little bit stalled and this 4/4 is kind of just sitting there and then it goes away. But even still, I think this does a good job of stabilizing in your slower decks. Just, 2 bodies. Sometimes it even helps you kind of turn the corner or take back the beatdown roll. If you've been like, defend, and then on turn 5, I slam my Chocobo, that bricks all of their things, and I get to untap, play a land, maybe even get a second landfall trigger somehow. That's been something that's happened a lot too. So yeah, generally just a pretty good card, a card that I'm happy to take, middle of the pack. Then we've got Summon Choco/Mog. This is the white one. So this is the 2 and a white 3/3. 4 chapters, all 4 of them are the same, and they say other creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. This one is less generically good. I think that I kind of view it as a fine filler creature in my aggressive white decks that gets a little bit better if you are going wide or if you have flyers, if you have any amount of evasion. There's actually not a ton of ways to go wide in this set. One of green-white's themes, and it's a light theme, is going wide. And there's just not that many token makers in the set, or not that many token makers that make multiple bodies. And those decks exist. They're there. But I don't find draft in, draft out when I'm drafting a white deck. Going wide is really a theme of my deck. Obviously, just helping you attack into bigger creatures is nice, just, pumping your creatures. But often I found to really make this card good, you have to be doing more than just, playing some creatures, playing a curve of creatures. You want to make sure that some of your creatures are evasive, or you're making a bunch of tokens. And then we've got, I think, maybe the worst Saga in this set, Summon Gluten-Free Efreet, Summon GF Efreet. So this is 2 and a red for a 3/2. And it's got 4 chapters. The first 2 chapters are, you may discard a card, and if you do, draw a card. Chapters 3 and 4 are add red mana. Fable of the Mirror Breaker, this is not. I have never seen this card attack. And mind you, it's only been a week. But this thing kind of, the play pattern I've experienced, and I haven't put this card in my deck very much. I've mostly seen my opponents play it. They play it on 3. Okay. They don't really want to block with it, because maybe they want to get the second trigger out of it. And also, it doesn't block all that well as the 3-drop. It's a 3/2. So it trades with the 2 drops, right? And then, maybe they get a second filter out of it. And then they go, okay, well, I could attack with it, but if I attack, I often trade down. Again, it's a 3-mana 3/2. Or maybe they go, okay, I actually want the mana next turn, so I can cast the card ahead of schedule. And so you've got all these factors of well, the body's not that good, and I kind of want to hold it to get full value, where you just kind of say, it's not really that much of a creature when it comes down to it. I mean, part of this is you could say it's user error. You could say that, people should be trading this off more willingly. But even when that's the case, even if this is just like 3 mana, comes in, rummage a card, trade off, that's not all that great. So I have not found this card to be particularly effective. Like, if you're in the market for attacking, 3 mana, 3/2 ain't it really. I don't think it's absolutely unplayable or anything, but just compared to the rest of the sagas, this one I don't think is very good. Uncommons now, starting with the best of the bunch, and this one's a real banger. This is Summon Fenrir. One of the best uncommons in the set, maybe just the best, I don't know, it's pretty close. So this is the 2 and a green, 3/2. First chapter is search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Second chapter is when you cast your next creature spell this turn, that creature enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. Third chapter says draw a card if you control the creature with the greatest power or tied for the greatest power. There's no way to profitably interact with this card. No matter what happens, when your opponent casts this card, they're 2-for-1ing you, right? They're getting a land, and maybe this trades for a creature. Or they're getting a land, and maybe you go, okay, I'll kill this with a removal spell. You know, that's still a 2-for-1. I mean, I guess the way to not have this be a 2-for-1 is this: they play this, and then they just never cast a creature. That's very, very unlikely to happen. Worth noting for that last chapter, the draw a card if you control a creature with the greatest power or tied with the greatest power. That does not count Fenrir, because by the time this ability resolves, Fenrir is already in the graveyard, so you have to have something else if you want that card to trigger. But yeah, really, really strong. I mentioned wanting to recur my sagas if they're strong enough. This one definitely counts. Like, this one is one I'm happy to recur a few times. Next, we've got Summon Shiva, which is the blue one. This is 3 blue for a 4/5. First 2 chapters say tap target creature and opponent controls, put a stun counter on it. Third chapter says draw a card for each tapped creature your opponent controls. This card, kind of a weird comparison, but it's kind of similar to Summon Fat Chocobo, where I like it better in aggressive decks than in controlling decks, but still okay in the slower controlling decks. So the idea here is this effect, tap a thing, it doesn't untap, like temporary lockdown, tends to be better in aggressive decks because, you can capitalize on the tempo you gain. You want this most in like a blue-white deck or, blue-white artifact aggro, you're tapping, this is your 5-drop, you tap down something, you get in a big hit. In your slower decks, it's still okay at stabilizing you. Like, it locks down their biggest attacker. It's a big 4/5 body. Creatures are fairly small in this set, as long as they're not equipped, so 4/5 blocks a lot of things at this point in the game. Worth noting for the last chapter, the draw card for each tapped creature your opponent controls. It kind of might read like you're going to draw 2 cards because you're tapping 2 things, but by the time you get to the third chapter, the first creature you've tapped down with Shiva will untap. So you're only really going to draw 1 card if Shiva's the only tapper in the equation, but blue gets 2 pretty good removal spells in this set that tap a creature and keep it tapped. So you got 1 at common, Stuck in Summoner's Sanctum, 3 mana, flash, aura, comes in, tap a thing, it doesn't untap, and Sleep Magic, the single blue mana, tap a thing, it doesn't untap, and if the creature was dealt damage, you destroy Sleep Magic. So yeah, I've had a few games where I go like Sleep Magic your 2-drop, Stuck in Summoner's Sanctum your 3, play Shiva, draw 3 cards off of it, and that's kind of nice. Next up is the white one, Summon Primal Garuda. So this is 3 and a white for a 3/3 flyer. First chapter says this creature deals 4 damage to a tapped creature an opponent controls, and then second and third chapter say another target creature you control get +1/+0 and gain flying until end of turn. A little bit awkward in the sense that if you're facing a slower deck that's just trying to block and isn't attacking you, like, the 4 damage is not going to come up that often, so you're often, like, either stuck with this card in hand with no target, or you're just going to go, okay, I'm going to run this out, deal some damage, and you kind of treat it like a lava axe, sort of, just, pure damage burst. And that's okay. I think either mode of the card is fine. It's at its very best in an aggro versus aggro matchup. Because if you can go, like, kill your flyer, and then I jump my creature, that completely swings the race. Obviously, Arena Best of 1, you can't really plan for that. But if you're playing Best of 3, I do think I might side this card out if you're facing a slower deck. If you've got this card in your deck, it's fine. It's generally okay. I think, basically the times that you can get full value on this, kill a creature and then get a huge chunk of damage, it's a really great card. But there's also a lot of times where it's just going to be stuck in your hand or you have to run it out just for damage. That's not as good, but that all averages out to, I'd say, a slightly above average card. So not a card I take very highly. I think quite a bit worse than the last 2 cards we talked about, but a card I think is just fine to play. Then we get to the last 2 uncommons here, and these ones I'm a little bit lower on. So Summon Esper Ramu is 2 red for a 3/3. First chapter says this deals damage equal to the number of non-creature, non-land cards in your graveyard to target opponent. And then chapters 2 and 3 are wizards you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. This is a card that I think is currently pretty overrated, as in people take it a little too highly. One, you have to have the right deck for it. It doesn't just go in any red deck. You have to have, I don't know, something like 10, 9 at a minimum non-creatures, and ideally you have ways to put cards in your yard. Either, you've got a little bit of self-mill. I've actually played this in a green-red deck before where I had Town Greeter, which is the 2-mana 1/1 that comes in, mills 4 cards. You can take a land from those, put it in your hand. Like, if you have other ways to fill your grave so you can actually cast this on turn 4 with some regularity, I like it quite a bit. But I do think that it's not good in every deck, and it's not even good in every blue-red deck I found. I mean, most blue-red decks, it's pretty good in, but I've had a blue-red deck or two that I have just cut on this card. And also, the chapter 2 and 3, they're semi-relevant, but, they're pretty minor. It's kind of flavor text chapters there. So yeah, I would just say with Summon Esperamu, just be picky with it. Don't take it too highly. I think you should hope to wield this card rather than take it and build around it or anything. Because, yeah, like I said, even in some decks that, you think it might belong in, I found it kind of underperforms a little bit. And then we've got the black one, Summon Anima. This is the 4 black 4/4 menace that has 4 chapters. The first 3 are all the same. They say you draw a card, you lose a life. Chapter 4 is each opponent sacrifices a creature, and they lose 3 life. So this one's interesting. I think that it's a pretty good top-end card for, like, a black grindy deck. A black, like, attrition, nickel and diming, maybe has some of the, like, the mage stuff, the pinging. I don't like it at all in slower decks, controlling decks. Because in those more aggressive, more grindy, more attrition-y, trying to, nickel and dime, drain you out sort of decks, it really does what you want. It, refills your hand. It is a good threat. But in the more controlling decks where you're really hoping for your 6-drop to stabilize you, I think it's just a little bit too poor. Like, 6 mana 4/4, that's pretty bad. 6 mana 4/4 that makes you lose a life like twice before you get to your next combat step. That's also a little bit rough. So, I think you could play this as a 23rd playable in a slower black deck, but really I'm looking for this in my more aggressive, more get you dead black deck. So like black-red. Black-red and black-white. I think this is a really good card there. And then the rares, I'm not going to go through all of them because most of them are just like, if you see this, you should take them. Like, for example, Summon Primal Odin is the black one. This is one of the best cards in the set. This is 6 mana 5/3. First chapter, destroy target creature and opponent controls. Second chapter, when this creature deals combat damage to a player, they lose the game. Third chapter, draw 2 cards, and each player loses 2 life. Yeah, this card's fantastic. Summon Leviathan, the blue one, also fantastic card. Summon Titan, the green one that, like, mills cards, brings back all the lands from your graveyard, and then makes a creature huge, +X and trample, where X is the number of lands you control. It itself is also just, happens to be a 5 mana 7/7 trample reach. So yeah, these are just, you open these, you should take these. There's also kind of 2 really expensive mythic ones. Summon Knights of the Round, which is the 8 mana 3/3 indestructible in white that, basically over the course of 4 turns or 5 turns, makes like 15 tokens. Each chapter, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4 is make 2 2/2 night tokens, or sorry, 3 2/2 night tokens. And the last chapter gives them all +2/+2 and indestructible. And Summon Bahamut, which is just like a big flying dragon that destroys things, draws cards. Both of these cards are pretty good, but of course they don't go in every deck. You have to mostly be a green deck, ramp, a lot of card draw. Getting to 9 and 8 mana is not trivial. But it's also doable. I think that's actually really important to note. That in some formats, I would just say, nope, don't touch the 9 mana card. I think this format is not blistering fast or anything. You have times to set up. You have time to cast a ramp spell, cast card draw spells. These are doable, but I would just firmly put them in the build around camp. And I would first pick them in a lot of packs. Like, there might be an uncommon, like if there was a Fenrir, for example, Summon Fenrir or Summon Bahamut, I might take the Fenrir. But I would take both Summon Bahamut and Summon Knights of the Round over most of the uncommons in this set. And then we get to the red summons, and, these ones I'm a little bit more dubious of. Red really got the short end of the stick as far as summons go, didn't they? So, Summon Girlfriend Cerberus is the 4 mana 2 red 3/3. First chapter is Surveil 1. Second chapter is whenever you cast your next instant or sorcery, you copy it. Third chapter is whenever you cast your next instant or sorcery, you triple it. And it's a super feast or famine card where if you could untap with this, it's phenomenal. Like, untap within cast a spell, which, you know, I'm assuming you have a deck that is going to be loaded on spells, right? You're not just putting this in, like, your red-white deck or something. But if you have this in a good blue-red deck, you untap with this, you're almost certainly going to win. Yeah, you copy a removal spell, you copy a card, draw spell, whatever. If it survives the first turn, it's likely to survive the second turn. And, yeah, it's a really good card if you can untap. But, you know, if you don't, then it's a 4-mana 3/3 that doesn't block that well, dies to cheap removal, all that kind of stuff we don't like about 4-mana 3/3s that don't have much value when they enter. I will admit, Surveil has a little bit of value. And, you know, this is probably a good point. I'm not going to go through too many rares today, but there are actually a lot of rares in this set that are kind of like this. Something to take note of, where if you can untap with this, it's excellent. And if you don't, you're probably playing something a little bit understated, undercosted. Another good example is Vincent Valentine, which is like a black 4-mana 2/2 that whenever a creature your opponent controls dies, you put that creature's power worth of counters on Vincent, and when Vincent attacks, it turns into like a trampling lifelinker. Same thing. If you go untap with that card, phenomenal. But if you don't, it's really, really weak. It gets killed by a 1-mana spell, and you suffer a huge tempo loss. If you've been following my content for a while, you'll know my stance on these like 4-mana, I have to untap with this to be good. You know, no protection, no enter the battlefield effects kind of creatures. And usually my stance on them is, don't put these cards in your deck. Like, you might see your opponent cast them, and they get to untap, and, you know, they get to do the thing. But on average, you will win, or you will lose more often than you will win with this card in your deck. I think with a lot of those kind of cards in this set, the equation has kind of shifted, because when you untap with them, they're so good. Like, you are very likely to win the game if you untap with them. So I'm basically willing to take a risk a little bit more often in this set. So the 4-mana or 5-mana, no enter the battlefield effect, no protection, maybe is a little bit understated creature. Don't completely write those off. I would be willing to play those cool looking rares a little more often than I would in some other set, because I think they reward you. They pay you off for asking you to need to untap with them. And then the last one here, Summon Brynhildr. This is a 1 and a red 2/1. First chapter says you exile the top card of your library, and you can play that card any turn that you add a lore counter to this saga. And then chapter 2 and chapter 3 are your creatures get haste, or the next creature you cast this turn gets haste. And this one has played out interestingly. I think less good than I would have expected. I don't think this card is bad necessarily, but it's not a card I would take early, and it's one of those rares that I never really see, because you know, I think people take this a little bit higher than I would. So basically, you've got a 2-mana 2/1, not a good body, that replaces itself. That's good. We like that. Although sometimes you hit like a 5-drop or something, and then that's not so good. And the haste mode is a little bit awkward, because if you cast a token maker, doesn't work, right? Because it's creature spell. If you cast a job select equipment, doesn't work, because that's not a creature spell. So you need to cast an actual factual creature for this to be more than just 2-mana 2/1 that might replace itself. I mean, if you can trade it off somehow, that's great, right? You're getting a good deal. You get to trade it off, replace itself. I'm happy with that. But most of the time, your opponent just goes, okay, I'll just not trade off. You know, you've cycled the card, essentially. So if you have ways to recur your sagas, for example, there's the green-red uncommon, the 2-mana 1/2 that recurs sagas. Like, that's a really good thing to recur with that card. It's very cheap, and you get, you know, double value off of it. But I think on average, this card is a little bit without a home and a little bit awkward in the format. So again, not an unplayable card, but not one I would take highly. And then one final thought before we get into some individual cards. We're about to talk about all the colors next. I just wanted to quickly note format speed. It's a question I've gotten a lot this week. There's the feeling that it's a little bit of a slower format, and I don't think I would exactly describe it as slow, but I do think that if you're an aggro deck, you're not just going to win by going 2-drop ground creature, 3-drop ground creature, 4-drop ground creature. I think that the cards don't really lend themselves to just pushing damage naturally. I think if you're an aggressive deck, just like a red-white aggressive deck, let's say, you do need to plan for the later parts of the game, or at least like you need to plan for getting brickwalled. The equipment, of course, helps there to help your creatures keep attacking, but I would really, really be looking for evasion in like your black-red decks. You know, the pinging really helps. And, you know, I mentioned when I was talking about the sagas that the 8-mana and 9-mana sagas, like, those are playable cards. So I would kind of relate it to Aether Drift if you want a recent format example, where, Aether Drift wasn't slow, but you also had time to play expensive cards. The cheap cards didn't often hit very, very hard. Of course, there's still curve outs to happen, unless we're playing like the slowest of slowest glacial formats, that's always going to be the case. But I would just say if you find yourself losing with, aggressive decks, cheap aggressive decks, probably means that you're not planning for your opponent just casting a 5-mana 4/4, make a 2/2 chocobo, fat chocobo summon, right? Like, that can ruin your day alone. That can be the stabilizing turn, and you never come back. So really do prioritize evasion, and those job select equipments I think are pretty important for aggressive decks. And if you're a slower deck, really plan for the late game, right? Really plan for like, I'm going to go to turn 9. I'm not going to win on turn 7 necessarily. I need to have some card draw. I need to have some impactful cards. Basically, the decks that I've looked at this week that I go, this doesn't look like a very successful deck, those decks have had too many cheap things and not enough things to do up the curve. Build up the curve a little bit in this format is the advice I would give. And just before we get to our next section, I do want to shout out the Patreon, patreon.com/limitedlevelups. If you're enjoying the show, if you've watched my content for a while, I feel like you've got some value and you want to give back, go check that Patreon out. The link is in the description of this video and also the podcast feed. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, a like, a subscribe, a comment, that goes a long way as well. On that Patreon, we want to give back to you, of course, if you choose to give to us. So there's a bunch of perks over there, including Discord benefits and deck tech help and coaching at higher tiers. So yeah, check that out if you're interested in any of that. And let's get back to the show. Okay, so for this next section, I'm just going to go through all the colors and talk about some standout cards, talk about where I see the better cards in the format, where they kind of fit in, talk about some packages of cards, talk about generally what I think each color is trying to do. Mostly going to focus on commons, but also going to kind of interlace good uncommons and some notable rares in there too. So we're going to start with white. We're just going to go in Wooburg order here. I think out of all the colors, white is the most one-tracked, as in like it does one thing well and doesn't really contribute that much to other decks. So I think it's very, very good at being aggressive. I think it's not so good at playing in a slower deck. I mean, I can imagine white being a support color and like a grindy black-white deck or something like that. But most of the time when you start with white cards, like you're definitely thinking aggressive. The top white commons, there's 2 here, and I think they're pretty darn close. So white Auracite, 2 white artifact, enters the battlefield, exiles something until this leaves, and it taps to add white mana. And Magitech Infantry. This is the 1-mana 1/1 artifact creature that gets +1/+0 as long as you control another artifact, and you can pay 3 mana to search out another copy of it. So I think there's a good argument for if you see, like, if your pick 1, pack 1 is Auracite or Infantry, I think there's a pretty good argument for taking Infantry. White Auracite is an excellent removal spell, and it's going to be the safe pick for sure. But I think you end up with, like, 4 Infantries, your deck's going to be really, really good. Or like, that's a really, really good base for a white deck. Even 3 is really nice. And, unlike Whisper Squad from Ikoria, if you played that card that's very similar to this one I'm very happy with just 2 copies of. So, it's not really that risky, let's say, to first pick this card and be like, oh, what if I don't end up seeing 3 or 4 more? I think that's okay. I think if you see 1 additional copy, you're really happy. 3 and 4, that's kind of the sweet spot. And yeah, like I said, when you're there, it's really good. Like I've stared down this card on turn 1 with a sort of slower hand, playing tap land into 2-drop that doesn't block that well. My opponent plays this, attacks me for 2, and yeah, I'm just like, I can't really keep up. So yeah, I mean, up to you. This is definitely a drafter's choice. People that are just more likely to take the even keel, good removal spell, white Auracite, which, by the way, is very, very good. Like, this tap ability, adding mana, is awesome. It helps with equip costs. It can help with, just like double spelling. It just lets you double spell easier on future turns. So, yeah, basically 1 and 2, and I think you could kind of argue whichever one is which. But both phenomenal cards, and very happy to take these early. Past that, we've got a good package of aggressive cards for, the equipment / artifact kind of deck. So two job select equipments that are pretty solid here. White Mage's Staff. This is the 2-mana job select. The creature gets +1/+1, and when it attacks, you gain a life. The equip cost is 3. And what I've been pleasantly surprised with, actually, is Paladin's Arms. This is 2 and a white, job select. The equipped creature gets +2/+1 and has ward 1. The equip cost is 4. I think White Mage's Staff is the better of the bunch for sure, but I think the Paladin's Arms is like not that far behind it. Or like generally with these equipment decks, you're just looking for a creature that's fine stats on curve and the equipment that will help you grind through the late game. And both these cards do that relatively well. Both these cards also look, maybe a little bit dorky, maybe not that impactful. But in context of you often care about artifacts in your white decks. You often want equipment. You want to up your artifact count for certain cards that say like, look at the top 5 cards of your library. Take an artifact. There's an uncommon that does that when it attacks. Like you just often in your white decks, I find, want a density of artifacts. And so having as many creatures as you can be artifacts, so you can get your artifact count up to like, 12 or 13 or something. That's something that's pretty good. So yeah, I just really wanted to highlight Paladin's Arms because it looks really dorky. And like kind of like cards we've seen before in the past that have these stats and have not been very good. But just wanting the equipment, wanting a way to keep grinding in your white decks. Yeah, like just perfectly fine card. And then a card that can help with that hefty equip 4 on your Paladin's Arms is Weapons Vendor. So Weapons Vendor is an interesting one. This is the 4-mana 2/2. Comes in, draws a card, and at the beginning of your combat, you can pay 1 to attach an equipment to target creature you control. This card ranges from very strong to pretty darn bad, I think. And obviously, the factor here that matters of is it going to be really good in your deck or not so good is number of equipment. And that's why I really stress like White Mage's Staff and Paladin's Arms being pretty important. Just getting a density of these kind of cards, because then it can make Weapons Vendor a premium common for you. It's not a good card if you play it. It's just a 4-mana 2/2 draw card, replaces itself. Like, it's not terrible, but it's not really great. But you really feel it when your opponent like plays this. They've got a Paladin's Arms every single turn. They're turning their card into a threat. They're putting it on a flyer. Like that mana advantage you get from Weapons Vendor, excellent. So I would say once you've got something in the neighborhood of like 4 or 5 of these equipments, Weapons Vendor becomes an excellent card. Anything lower than that, it's going to be kind of whatever. It's also a 4-drop, and you can't afford too many 4-drops if you're taking White Auracite highly. You can't also have like 3 Weapons Vendors in your deck. So I would kind of aim for like 2 Weapons Vendors in my heavy equipment deck, and they're going to be very good there. Another pretty good threat, Galacat. This is the 2 and a white 1/3 Vigilant Flyer that says as long as you control 2 or more artifacts, this creature gets +2/+1. So it's a mini Sarah Angel, basically. It's a 3-mana 3/3 Flying Vigilance. And another card that really just wants you to take those staffs, take those Paladin Arms to make sure this is actually a 3/3 flyer and not just a 1/3. Another thing that if you just like equip the Paladin's Arms, for example, that's a 5-power evasive clock. That kills them very, very quickly. And then speaking of killing quickly, you are not alone. Single white mana for a instant that says target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, but gets +4/+4 instead if you control 3 or more creatures. 3 creatures is not a high threshold. That is an easy threshold to cross, and often this is 1 mana +4/+4. Which either leads to an incredibly efficient turn, you win a combat against like a big 6/6 or something, you play something else, or more often than not, I found with this card, I'm just holding it. I'm just going like, okay, this is just like 4 damage to the face on the final turn. It's a split card. You don't want to always think of it as one way or the other, but look for spots in the game where this won the game, because 4 is a big number, right? 4 to the face for a single mana, that's a big number. Like I mentioned, you want to be prioritizing evasive creatures anyways, so that's a pretty doable thing to go like Galacat with equipment, cast You're Not Alone, 9 damage out of nowhere. And then some uncommons to talk about. So, I was talking about these drop select equipments, and the best one, I think by a lot at uncommon or common, is Dragoon's Lance. This is the 1 and a white one that gives the creature +1/+0 in flying on your turn, and the equip cost is 4. So 2 mana 2/1 flyer on your turn. That's a great rate. That's something your opponent has to kill, probably. And just being able to say, like, all right, all of my creatures are going to get flying at some point. Like, you have to deal with every single one. Another thing that's nice with Weapons Vendor. Also, Delivery Moogle. This one's sweet, too. This is the 4-mana 3/2 flyer that searches your graveyard or library for an artifact with mana value 2 or less. You reveal it, put it into your hand. And yeah, just another great card. Evasive, goes and gets an equipment. Nothing to dislike about this card, really. Also, as I'm talking about the cards in this section, I am going to be talking about the bonus sheet. So probably a good time to just talk about the bonus sheet and how it exists in this set, just in general. So the bonus sheet in this set, if you haven't heard, is a little weird. Because previously with bonus sheets, it was just like 1 in every pack. Basically, you see a bonus sheet card in every pack. Not the case in this set. It's 1 in every 3 packs, which I'm not exactly sure how they decided to do that, but that's what it is. And most of the cards in the bonus sheet are rare or mythic, so you're going to see them very sparingly. Like, you're going to see the average bonus sheet rare. I think it's a little bit less often than the average main set mythic, so they're pretty rare. But there are 12 uncommons on this bonus sheet, and you see these pretty often, like draft in, draft out. Like I see these cards quite a bit, so they're worth paying attention to. I'm definitely going to have some piece of content, I think, in the next week or so, going over the rare and mythic bonus sheet cards, because we didn't do that for the set review. So I think just, good to kind of take in all the cards for those who want to know that. So, stay tuned. I think next week I'm probably going to do some sort of like tier list of all the bonus sheet cards. But for now, we'll talk about the uncommons, and White's uncommons, 2 of them are pretty good. So we've got Danitha, which is a 2 and a white 1/1 legendary creature. First strike, vigilance, lifelink. Aura and equipment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So, natural fit to this equipment deck, a really solid threat. And Wall of Omens. This one's also pretty solid, too. Less good for your aggressive white decks, which most of your white decks are, of course, in this format. But, if you are a bit of a slower white deck, this card's really strong. This is the 2-mana 0/4 Defender. When it enters, draw a card. So yeah, overall, I've liked White quite a bit. Like I mentioned, it's very one-tracked. It's doing the aggressive artifact thing, but it does that quite well. I think there's a lot of tools for that. I would also say that if you are maybe struggling with this set, maybe White's a good color to draft, because it's pretty straightforward. All the cards kind of play one way, right? There's not a lot of complexity going on here. Almost the cube advice. Whenever somebody's new to cube, the advice you often hear is like, well, you should just draft mono white or mono red, because, as you're learning the decks of cube, your opponents are going to have the complicated decks. You can see those in action. You'll still have a pretty good deck. You'll still have a very effective deck, but it's not that hard to piece together. You can just take the white cards and see what works. As far as archetypes go, the cards we've talked about here definitely fit more into blue-white and red-white than they do white-black and white-green. White-green, definitely that one's a little bit closer to the Jeskai decks than white-black is. But white-black, I think, not to get too deep into this, but I think white-black is a little bit more of a black deck than a white deck. And we'll talk about what that means when we get into the black cards. All right, next up is blue. And I'm going to try my darnest. I'm going to try really, really hard not to spend 20 minutes talking about blue. But I will say, blue is great in this format. I love when blue is a good color in Limited. And as per usual, when blue is a good color, it tends to be a little bit underrated by the general arena draft population. I've been drafting a lot of blue, not only because it's good, but because I'm getting a lot of really good blue cards late in this format. And in some formats where, blue is, I think, a little bit tricky to play. It's, very counterspell heavy, very, leave up mana focused. I actually think it's a little more straightforward in this format. A lot of the blue cards, what they're good at is attacking, actually, kind of not usually blue slice of the color pie. But a lot of blue's top commons are just good creatures, kind of funny enough. So let's just dive into it. So I think the number 1 blue common, we've seen this template before. It's proven to be a good card time and time again. Dragoon's Wyvern. This is the 2 and a blue 2/1 flyer that comes in with a 1/1 hero token. It just, making 2 bodies, one of them being evasive, one of them being something you can sacrifice or trump block with or double block with or attack with. It's all good stuff. This card goes in any blue deck. It really doesn't matter too much. And not much else to say other than this card is currently going too late. I see this card 9th, sometimes wheel. It's week 1. Weird things happen, of course, but don't be that person. Take this card highly. Then, after that, we've got quite a nice package of good blue spells that are not that far below the Dragoon's Wyvern. So, 3 cards here I want to call out as very good blue cards. One of them that took me a while to warm up to, but the more and more I played it, I was like, okay, no, this card is really strong. Combat Tutorial. 2 and a blue for a sorcery. You draw 2 cards, and then you put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature you control. So this card, Divination, 3 mana, draw 2 cards. They've been trying out different variants of this kind of card in the past few years, because just 3 mana, draw 2 is not quite good enough these days. And some of them better than others, but I think they really hit the sweet spot with this one. Getting a counter is not quite like a whole 1.5 of a card or anything, but it's really strong. It is power and toughness. It's adding to the board. Being able to go 2-drop into this, that's pretty good. Putting it on a flyer, that's pretty good too. I started just like playing a copy of this card, and I was like, okay, like maybe it'll be pretty good. And every single time I drew, I was like, oh, this just feels so good. And then I started playing more and more and more. And I'm not afraid to play 3 copies at this point. And I think one of the things you have to consider with this is you do want to have a relatively high creature count, because if you're not getting the counter consistently, it is just divination, 3 mana, draw 2, which is a little bit below rate. But if you have something in the neighborhood of 13, 14 creatures, yeah, like I said, I'm very happy to play multiple of this card. You don't have to take this highly, at least not right now. This is a card that's flying under the radar. But yeah, I just cannot sing the praises of this card highly enough. Another card draw spell, Dreams of Laguna. This is 1 and a blue for an instant, surveil 1, and then draw a card. Flashback for 3 and a blue. So a relatively simple card, but a lot going on here. Number 1, surveilling and then drawing a card is, I think, quite a bit better than just drawing a card, because when all is said and done, when you cast both sides of this card, you're seeing 4 cards. That's a lot of cards for just digging to what you need. And this plays a really important role in a lot of decks. So the kind of obvious one is the flashback cost being 4 mana. It triggers all of your red-blue non-creature that cost 4 or more mana things, right? It's really nice for that deck. But I played this in blue-green very happily, because, you have some self-mill. Again, Town Greeter, the 2 mana 1/1 that mills 4, you can take a land. Like, when you get to draw this card for free, it feels very good. In blue-black, there's some self-mill too. It fits in a lot of decks, and I'm happy to play, 2 copies of this card, I would say. One thing to note is, while Combat Tutorial and Dreams of Laguna are very similar cards in some regards, they're both draw spells, I think they go in slightly different decks, and it's not that you can't have both these cards in the same deck, but they want different cards. They ask different things of you. And to zoom this out to a big picture point, I think it's a really important concept in this set. And it's an important concept in any limited set, but it's really popped up for me a lot in this first week, where when all of the cards are pretty strong, like I mentioned, there's not that much filler. I think what differentiates the really good cohesive decks from the kind of like middling pile of card decks is knowing when you want a combat tutorial or when you want Dreams of Laguna, right? So when you have 14, 15 creatures, yeah, combat tutorial is going to be better. When you've got the non-creature matters cards and you've got self-mill, and maybe you're playing at instant speed and you don't have creatures, you're going to want Dreams of Laguna a little bit more. I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I see this format very much as like a sandbox, where you can just like piece these cards together, and like this card plays well with this card and maybe not so well with this card. For me, a lot of figuring out this format has been exactly that. Noting not just, okay, this card is pretty good, but also, where does it excel? What's its actual home? What's the best place to put it? What cards do I want to pair it with? And kind of building up your library of those things, those interactions, right? I think that's something to keep an eye on as you explore the set a little bit more. Okay, next up. Oh man, I'm not doing a very good job of not taking 20 minutes on the blue section here. Ice Magic, phenomenal interaction spell. Ice Magic is 1 and a blue for an instant. And it's a tiered spell, so you can, 3 different modes here. The 2 mana version is just bounce a creature, which is very good in this format. By the way, lots of tokens running around. The Chocobo tokens, there's the job select equipment. Yeah, really nice. 4 mana to top or bottom, right? Instant speed, they get to choose top or bottom, which, once again, this is a spell that triggers the blue-red 4 mana non-creature stuff. And 8 mana, target creature's owner shuffles it into their library, which doesn't come up very much, but there is an uncommon that, keep this in the back of your head. 8 mana. Keep that in the back of your head for a second. It's going to be relevant. But yeah, just really, really great. I'm usually pretty high on these top or bottom removal spells. Giving it the modality of just being 2 mana at times is really phenomenal. So just these 4 cards, Ice Magic, Combat Tutorial, Dreams of Laguna, and Dragoon's Wyvern, all really a very, very nice package that usually play well together. Another comment that I think just is outside looking in on the cards we just talked about is Sahajin. So this is a 1 and a blue 1/3. Then whenever you cast a non-creature spell, if at least 4 mana was spent to cast it, there's that line of text, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it can't be blocked. So I'm going to, once again, I've called out this podcast before, but the Rough Drafts podcast with Sam Pratt as the host. It's a relatively new podcast. What Sam does is he goes like really in depth on one specific card in a format each week. And this week, for the first episode of this format, it was Gene, and he went on and on like half an hour about why this card is good and the places you want it. And I'm not going to copy all his content. I would go recommend listening to that podcast. But one thing that he said that I think is very true is this is not a blue-red card. This is just a blue card. Yes, it might be a little bit better in blue-red, but most of your blue decks are happy with a 2-mana 1/3 that grows over the course of the game. You know, I already mentioned 2 spells that'll help this grow, 2 good spells you already want in your blue decks, Ice Magic and Dreams of Laguna, and there's a few more that we're going to talk about in a second here. So, yeah, Sahajin, I think people have actually caught on to this one pretty quickly. Like, I don't think this one's very underrated. It doesn't take very long for you to go, oh, yeah, I'm dying to this unblockable monster that blocked all my creatures early. Yeah, did you want to kind of highlight and reiterate, this is just a blue spell, not a blue-red spell. Another card that I like quite a bit that triggers your Sahajin is Retrieve the Esper. This is the 4-mana, make a 3/3 Robot Warrior artifact token, and you can flash it back for 6 mana, and if you cast it from your graveyard, comes in with 2+1/+1 counters. It comes in as a 5/5. I've just been happy with this spell. Like, 4 mana 3/3, draw 5/5, draw 6 mana 5/5. That's been good. Also has synergy in basically all the blue archetypes. So yeah, this is one that you can pick up pretty late usually, but I'm happy filling my deck with it. Another nice creature is Scorpion Sentinel. This is another one that took me a little bit to warm up to, but I like it quite a bit. 1 in a blue for a 1/4 artifact creature. And it says as long as you control 7 or more lands, it becomes a 4/4. And in this format, I haven't had many games where I don't get the 7 lands. My games usually go that long, so this becomes a 4/4 at some point. It's also a really nice thing to go Sentinel into Combat Tutorial on turn 3, right? Making a 2/5 blocker. That, nothing gets through that. So yeah, happy to play that one. And then just a few interaction/counter spells here. Syncopate. X in a blue, counter target spell unless they pay X, and exile it. People always forget about that exile part. But yeah, Syncopate's always just solid. It's never going to be exciting. It's never going to be bad. Never a bad idea to put in your deck, really. So a fine card to just play. And Stuck in Summoner's Sanctum. This is the blue tap a thing it does an untap removal spell. Again, just another kind of fine interaction spell. So yeah, just at the common level, blue is really deep. And then we've got a healthy handful of uncommons that are very good in blue as well. So, one that is definitely flying under the radar. I wheel this card sometimes. I just get super late. Swallowed by Leviathan. I think this card is awesome. I currently have it as the top blue uncommon. This is 2 in a blue for an instant. Choose target spell. Use Surveil 2. And then, you get to counter target spell unless they pay 1 for each card in your graveyard. And this seems kind of conditional. It basically never is, right? Because on turn 3... you get to counter a 3-drop just by surveilling, putting cards in the yard. And then later in the game, it's just a hard counter spell that you also get to surveil 2 on top of. And that's really great. Like, being able to counter something plus set up your next draw. Very powerful card. Actually, this brings up an interesting point just in general. There's a lot of cards in this set that say, do a thing when you have 8 cards in your yard, or in some cases more. There's like a mythic that says 14 cards in the yard. But there's like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 cards that say, I turn on or I get better when you got 8 cards or multiple cards in your graveyard. I've really not found a problem turning those cards on at all. There's some sets where those kind of cards exist and you go, oh, it's not on very often, or I really have to make sure that in the draft I pick up cards that self-mill. I found a lot of the cards that self-mill in this set are just pretty good cards. You want to take them anyways. And so, yeah, I just have not found a problem enabling those cards. And yeah, so Swallowed by Leviathan, excellent uncommon. We've also got Ultros, Obnoxious Octopus. I remember I said with Ice Magic, keep that 8 mana value in the back of your head. Here's why. 1 in a blue for a 2/1. It's a legendary creature. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, if at least 4 mana was spent to cast it, tap target creature an opponent controls, it gets a stun counter. And if you cast a non-creature spell and 8 mana was spent on it, you get 8+1/+1 counters on Ultros. This thing, I definitely underrated this card when I first saw it. I kind of thought, okay, kind of small body, maybe you trigger it once in a while. Just like I was just talking about with the graveyard stuff is almost always on. I kind of feel similar about the 4 mana value non-creature stuff. I don't often sit around in my decks and go, I just don't have anything to cast and my cards don't do anything. Which again, is a really nice thing about this set. I feel like the themes just work. You just take the good cards and those themes just work most of the time. And they work for Ultros. Often I go, okay, 2 mana, play this as a 2/1. Maybe you get an attack, maybe not. On turn 4, you often get to tap something down if you want to. And then, once in a while, this turns into a gigantic creature, right? Turns into a 10-power creature. Very, very strong. A few more premium uncommons. Blue has quite a few. Ilmeg Pixie, simple card, but good one. 2 mana, 2/1 flying. Whenever it attacks, surveil 1. And the aforementioned Sleep Magic. Single blue mana, tap a thing. It doesn't untap. It's an aura. And whenever this creature is dealt damage, the sleep magic falls off, which basically never happens. You have to have like a fight spell or a bite spell, basically. That's one of the common ways to punish it. But most of the time, it's just like a blue 1-mana removal spell. A few more generically pretty good cards. Counterspell is in the set on the bonus sheet. So just blue, counter target spell. Not much to say, but it's a good card. We've got Quistis Trep. And I'm sure this one I'm pronouncing wrong. Please let me know in the comments. But this is 2 and a blue for a 2/2 uncommon. When it enters, you can exile a instant or sorcery from any graveyard. You get to cast that card with mana of any color. This is another one that I was kind of like, lukewarm on. And I think even in one of my early drafts of the format, as I was streaming, somebody asked me like, oh, you're passing that card? It seems pretty good. I've had good experiences with it. And I was like, I don't know. I don't think it's that good. You know, it's a 3-mana 2/2 for most of the game. And you really have to have a deck with a lot of spells in it. I haven't found that to be the case. I found that with the amount of self-mill that I often have in my blue decks, or just ways to get cards in the graveyard, also this triggering off your opponent's stuff gives you a lot more selection. I found this to be a very good uncommon. Just below those premium uncommons that we talked about, but I'm a big fan. Eject, great card as well. 4-mana instant. Can't be countered. You get to bouncing non-land permanent, draw a card. This kind of card is basically always good in any limited format. Then we've got Travel the Overworld. This is 5 blue for a sorcery. Affinity for towns, so 1 cheaper for each town you control. Draw 4 cards. You know how many cards 4 is? It's a lot. And this is a real nice payoff for the town deck, which we'll get into talking about a little bit later. But I think if you can get this to like 4 mana, 3 mana, a lot of my town decks, I get this to 2 mana. It feels phenomenal. I'm a big fan of this. So basically, this is a town card, but sometimes you end up with enough towns in your deck, you're just splashing. Like, I'd say 5 towns is where I'm happy with this card, that I'll just play it. And then 2 sort of more niche ones. We've got Side Quest Card Collector. This is a 4-mana enchantment. When it enters, you draw 3, then discard 2. In the beginning of your end step, if there are 8 or more cards in your graveyard, you know, there's that theme I talked about, transform this. It flips into a 4/4 flying crew 1 vehicle. So, you know, baseline on this card, 4 mana, draw 3, discard 2. That's not even drawing a card, right? You're just filtering. You're not going up a card. But oftentimes, you're discarding a flashback card with this. So you do kind of sort of go up a card, right? And like I mentioned, it's very, very easy to get to 8 cards in this set, I find. So you basically get a filter that maybe you put a card in the grave and then a 4/4 flying crew 1 artifact. This card, I kind of deemed, you know, when we were looking at the set review, I remember we graded this very, very low. I think this is actually just a solid blue card. You want flashback cards to make it good. You do want a little bit of self-mill to be able to enable it quickly. But yeah, I think this is not a card you should ignore. And then Brainstorm. This is a quick one. This is a blue mana instant, another bonus sheet card. Draw 3 cards and then put 2 cards from your hand back on top of your library. So for those who are not familiar with Storming Brains, this is a legacy staple. And the reason it's so good in older formats is because of fetch lands. The idea with Brainstorm to make it more than just like, I get to see my cards a little bit early, because that's what it is normally, right? You like draw 3, put 2 back, you're going to see those cards eventually. To make it more than that, you want shuffle effects. And in Legacy, they have fetch lands. There's no fetch land in this format, there's no Evolving Wilds, but there are quite a few ways to shuffle your library. Or like just clear the top of your deck. So example, again, Self-Mill, Town Greeter. I'm going to talk about Town Greeter, I'm sure, 10 more times during this episode. The green 1/1 that mills 4. So if you can go like Brainstorm, cast my Town Greeter, clear the top few cards, that's pretty good. So yeah, Brainstorm isn't a card I would put in most of my blue decks, but if you have something like 4 or 5 shuffle effects or ways to clear the top of your library, then yeah, it's a pretty good card. Okay, I think I clocked in under 20 minutes on that. I think I was successful, just barely though. And yeah, just final thoughts on blue. Blue is great, like I mentioned. I do think if I'm to call a top color, I would say it's blue. Part of this is that you get the blue cards later than you should, but even when things balance out a little bit more, I still think blue is very strong, very deep. All right, black up next. And one thing I can say that is very good about black is that it has quite a few busted rares. So not going to read these all out because there's quite a few of them, but I got them on screen here if you're watching. I will call out one card because I think this card is being underrated, as in this is one of the best cards in the set, like top 5, and I've gotten it passed to me in pack 1 quite a few times already. So Arden the Usurper is a 5 black 4/4 legendary creature at rare. And again, 8 mana, kind of scary. Triple black, can be kind of scary, but this set, it's doable. There's fixing, there's time to get to 8 mana. So for your 8 mana, you're getting a 4/4 that say demons you control have menace, lifelink, and haste. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, exile up to 1 target creature from a graveyard, you or your opponent. You make a copy of this card, except it's a token that's a 5/5 black demon. So on turn 8, you get to slam this, 4/4, instantly reanimate something, comes back as a 5/5 with lifelink, menace, haste. Just a really busted card. I would not pass this card. Very strong card. But aside from just very strong rares, it's got a pretty healthy helping of good commons and uncommons too. So, as is often the case, black's removal tends to be pretty good. Sephiroth's Intervention, the 4 mana destroy target creature, you gain 2 life. Good spell. Vein's Treachery, 2 mana, instant, sack a thing. If you want, if you don't sack a thing, gives -2/-2 to a creature. If you do, -6/-6. And a card that I definitely think deserves some time for me to explain why this card is so good. And it is a really good comment. Cornered by Black Mages. 1 black for a sorcery. Target opponent sacrifices a creature of their choice. You make an 0/1 black wizard token with whenever you cast a non-creature. This token deals 1 damage to each opponent. So black's cards in this set, I think they support 2 main themes. One of them being, green-black, helps fill the graveyard. These, removal spells just tend to be good in, a green-black slower deck. But then there's the other side of things that's more interested in, nickel and diming, pinging with the mages. So we're talking, white-black and red-black. And, I think blue-black is kind of a mix between the two. It can be one or the other. It's not super clearly defined. But when you're in this kind of pinging small game deck where you're just trying to attrition the opponent out, trade resources, drain your opponent out, Cornered by Black Mages is really, really strong. In the red-black or white-black deck, you really want all of your cards just to trade 1.5 for 1, right? That's what attrition is all about. So we're talking cards like Resentful Revelation, which is another black common to talk about, the 2 mana sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards, take a card from them, put it in your hand. The rest go in your grave. This has flashback for 7 mana. So you get to draw a card. Sometimes you bin flashback cards or cards that you're going to get back from your graveyard at some point, and then you can cast them for 7 mana at some point, do it again. You've got cards like Hecdize, which is the 2 mana 1/1. Each opponent discards a card when this enters. And Cornered by Black Mages plays really, really nicely into that strategy. Again, just attritioning them out. You're making them sack something. You're getting something. I posted on Twitter earlier this week that this card's awesome, really good card, and just to kind of frame this, I think this is a top common if you're at all in this black attrition-y kind of space with these pinging wizards. And I had a lot of people agreeing with me, saying oh yeah, this card is much better than I expected it to be. But I also had a lot of people saying I don't know, this format has a lot of tokens. I feel like you're not, the sacrifice effect isn't very good. I think the thing to recognize with this card is that even when your opponent sacks a token to this, you're getting a fairly good deal. Don't think of this so much as a removal spell that's going to kill anything and you point and click at their best creature. That's not its purpose. Its purpose is to grind out, be attrition-y, get a little bit of incremental value with this package of all these other cards that give you incremental value. Sometimes you will just nab a great creature. They play a 6 mana 6/6 trample. That's their only creature. You feel phenomenal when you get to do that and make the token. But even if you're just making them sacrifice a token, a 1/1, a Chocobo token, getting rid of one piece of material from their board and you getting this wizard, which you can sacrifice or trump block with or get some pings out of, that's a good exchange on its own. At worst case scenario, you're fine on that exchange. It's kind of the way I would look at it. And yes, there are some game states that it's not going to do at all what you want, but that is true for any card. Every card has a fail state. I'm just trying to say, if you're low on Cornered by Black Mages still, don't look at the fail state of this card as, oh, they sacked a token, that's bad. That's still good in this attrition plan. Now, you do need to be heavy black, of course, because this is a 1 black card. You have to be worried about that. You can't just jam that into a heavy red deck, for example. But I think when you're in this space of attrition-y black, every card is incremental value, it's often a heavy black strategy. A lot of cards that play into that are black cards. Some other commons I like in black are Shinra Reinforcements. This one's been really impressive. This is the 2 and a black 2/3 that when it enters, you mill 3 and you gain 3 life. So I think this card is good in any black deck. Not as good in the attrition black decks as it is in the graveyard green-black decks where you really care about the mill. But even in the attrition decks, you'll mill a flashback card here and there. 2/3 gain 3 life. Like, that's, multiple resources. I found that the body is pretty good in this format. So a card that I'm very happy to fill my black decks out with. And then the Land Cycler, Malboro. So, going into the format, the story kind of for me was like, well, the green Land Cycler, the 6 mana 6/6 trample gain 3, that looks great. The other ones kind of look like they suck. And I think that's mostly true, but Malboro is pretty good. I think this is definitely one of the playable ones. This is the 6 mana 4/4. When it comes in, each opponent discards a card, loses 2 life, and exiles the top 3 cards of their library, and then swamp cycling for 2 mana. So yeah, just a fairly good effect, in both the green-black deck and the attrition black decks, the red-black, white-black decks, where in green-black, you can cycle this early, get a permanent in your yard, keep hitting your land drops. In the attrition black decks, it's multiple resources you're stripping from the opponent, right? You're making them discard a card. You make them lose 2 life, and that 2 life adds up, by the way. Like, a lot of the cards I've already talked about, and some more we're going to get to, a lot of these cards drain, right? So it's really like death by 1,000 cuts for these attrition decks, and the 2 life really matters here. Also, I've already lost multiple games where my opponent has cast this, and they just milled the last 3 cards of my library, and I'm like, oh crap, that does it. So that comes up once in a while too, so definitely a playable Land Cycler. And then one more common to call out here, I don't think this is a phenomenal common or anything, but for that attrition-y pinging black deck, this one's pretty good. Black Mage's Rod, the 1 in a black, drop select equipment. The equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has the wizard ping ability. So whenever you cast a non-creature, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent, and the equip cost is 3. So again, not a phenomenal card, and doesn't go in the green-black graveyard deck or anything, but definitely good in the red-black and the white-black deck, especially because it's 2 pieces of material, right? So you can sack one of them and keep around the other. Black uncommons to call out. So we've got Side Quest Hunt the Mark. 5 mana enchantment comes in. You can destroy a creature. And the beginning of your end step, if a creature your opponent controlled died, you make a treasure. Then if you got 3 or more treasures, it flips to a 5/6 big creature. You can pay 2 mana to sacrifice another creature or artifact. This thing gains indestructible, and you tap it. Great card. I think this is the best black uncommon, just very powerful. 5 mana removal spell, it makes a treasure, flips into a big creature later. Also really cool that when you flip this, if you've got 3 treasures, which you will, the creature can sacrifice something right away, right? Because no matter how much mana you have, how much material, you'll have 3 treasures, so you can use 2 of those treasures to activate the ability and sacrifice the last treasure. Overkill, excellent removal spell, just 3 mana instant. Target creature gets -0, -9,999. It's not very good against creatures with 10,000 power, but I don't think there's that many of those in the set. So, watch out for those. But one other card that I was really impressed with that I didn't expect to be is Circle of Power. This is the 3 in a black sorcery. You draw 2 cards, lose 2 life, make a pinging wizard token, and wizards you control get +1/+0 and gain lifelink until end of turn. So, again, just another great card for the pinging, attrition-y black decks. One thing to note is that you might think, when I cast this, my wizards are all going to get lifelink pings. They don't. It's actually a little bit awkward, because what happens is you cast this card, and the pinging triggers go on the stack, and then this card resolves, and then your wizards get lifelink. So, further spells, yes, you'll get lifelink pings. But this, if you already have wizards on the board, this isn't going to make them ping lifelink, unfortunately. One last black comment I want to call out here is Shambling Seath. So this is the 3 mana 3/3, enters tapped, and then whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you can pay black, and if you do, return it from your graveyard to your hand. So I think this card is fairly filler, but I just wanted to call it an interaction with this card. So if you sacrifice this card to something like Vane's Treachery, you'll actually be able to get it back right away, because you sacrifice it, Treachery happens, you cast a non-creature, that whenever you cast a non-creature effect, it goes in the stack, and your Shambling Seath's already in the graveyard. So no extra work, just sack your Seath, you can get it back. This also works with the red discard a card, draw 2 cards spell in this set. So if you discard as an additional cost, puts it in the graveyard, the non-creature thing triggers, and yeah, you can get it back right away. There's a few other black commons that I was going to talk about, but I think they're kind of obvious that they're pretty good. So again, just kind of think, if you're looking at black cards in this set, does it go in the attrition-y pinging wizard deck? Does it go in the green-black graveyard deck? I think that kind of helps you sort out which cards go where. And overall, I like black. Yeah, I like black more than I thought I would. It looked a little bit mopey, I thought, before I started playing with the cards. But yeah, I've been pretty impressed with most of the black decks. Moving on to red now. And as much as I've been going on about the set being balanced, I do think red is the weakest color by a good amount. Not to the level that I want to avoid it, not to the level that you don't want to play it, just to the level where I don't think you want to be a heavy red deck. Red is a very good support color. It's got really good interaction. It has some interesting synergy pieces. But I haven't really found myself drawn into a very, very heavy red deck. The obvious good cards, the removal, Thunder Magic, that's the shock, Suplex, that's the deal 3, Lightning Bolt is in this set on the bonus sheet, single red mana, deal 3 to any target instant speed. So yeah, that's your obvious stuff. That's all pretty good. We've also got a excellent uncommon in Choco Comet, X red sorcery, deals X damage to any target, and you make a 2/2 bird token with landfall. This is a great early pick. I have splashed this in my multicolor decks as well. It's not just, a red aggro card. It can be a really good finisher, a really good stabilizer, one of the best uncommons. Also, another one of the best uncommons, Samurai's Katana. This is a 2 and a red equipment. This is a job select equipment. Equip creature gets +2/+2 trample and haste. And the equip cost is 5. So 3 mana 3/3 trample haste, that's already good. And then yeah, just like one of the better equipments in the set. Another really, really nice one with the weapons vendor, right? The white 2/2 for 4 that helps you equip things. We've also got Captain Lannery Storm on the bonus sheet. Very difficult to read this card. That's one thing. Like, I actually really like the art on a lot of these bonus sheet cards. They got some of the original Final Fantasy artists to draw them. But a lot of these are just like, they actually just took the image from like the game they were from, like not new art, just like out of a screenshot. And text does not look very good. It's very hard to read. But I'll save you the trouble and I'll read it out for you. Captain Lannery Storm is a 3 mana 2 and a red 2/2. It's got haste. Whenever you attack, you make a treasure token, and whenever you sacrifice a treasure, Lannery gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So yeah, really solid creature there. I've also really liked Call of the Mountain Chocobo. This is the 4 mana sorcery. Go get a mountain from your deck, make a 2/2 landfall bird, and has flashback for 6 mana. I think just a really good value card for the slower decks or like a red-green landfall deck, not for your red-white equipment decks or anything. But yeah, strong card there. And, that's kind of it. I mean, there's probably a few more cards that I could call out here for red, but a lot fewer standout cards. Worth noting that I think the cards I mentioned are all really good. Like, I like these cards. It's not a bad idea to put red cards in your deck. There's just a few more junky red cards than the other colors. 2 more cards I want to call out here, though, before we move on to green. Sorceress's Schemes, which is a card with many S's in its name. In fact, 4 S's in a row. And this is a card that looks very, very bad, but it is actually pretty good. 3 and a red for a sorcery. Return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard or exiled card with flashback you own to your hand, add red mana. So, a little bit of weird text box here because it's easy to misread. It makes it kind of seem like you have to get a card with flashback, but no, you get any instant or sorcery from your graveyard or a flashback card from exile. Okay, so basically rebuy something for 4 mana, you get 1 mana back rebate, also has flashback for 4 and a red. This is a red-blue card exclusively, but a really good red-blue card. This gives you so many triggers for your cards that care about 4-cost non-creature cards, right? Because you cast this, you get a trigger. You buy back a 4-cost spell, you get a trigger there. You flash this card back, buy back another 4-cost spell, you get another trigger. Like, when you have this card, your red-blue deck will never run out of triggers. It's kind of the way to look at it. And of course, you can get some really busted things back. Getting back a Choco Comet's very, very good. Yeah, so only for the slower red-blue decks, but a really nice piece there. And then I do have to call out, just like Arden, the black 8-mana card, I'm like, oh, this card is busted and it shouldn't be getting past. Nibelheim of Flame, another busted card that shouldn't be getting past. This is 2 red for a mythic and sorcery. Choose target creature you control. It deals damage to its power to each other creature. But if the spell is cast from a graveyard, discard your hand and draw 4 cards. And of course, it's got flashback for 5 red. So a Wrath that you keep one of your creatures, also has flashback, also you go draw a million cards, and if you can target a Death Touch creature, well, that's very, very good. And somebody sent me a screenshot. German Gary Oak, one of my friends on Discord, he's also in my Twitch chat a lot, pointed out the interaction between this card and Lock Cole, which is the blue-black signpost uncommon. It's like 2/3 Death Touch lifelink. So not only will the Death Touch kill everything, but you also gain a bunch of life. Because lifelink on your 2-power lifelinker. So yeah, kind of a cool interaction, but this card is just great. This card is just busted. Don't pass this card. And then last but not least, we've got green. So green is mostly, in my experience so far, a multicolor, splish-splashy color in this set, like it's tended to be in the past little while, Wizards really kind of pushing multicolor stuff for green a lot of the times these days. It also can contribute to like a red-green landfall deck. I've seen some real sick, like, deal 20 damage out of nowhere decks. Real Naquam from my Discord. Very, very good player, often like, top 10 mythic. He really trounced me with this red-green deck that was playing like a bunch of trample tricks. There's like the +3/+3 trample trick and a bunch of giant stompy red-green creatures. And I think in one turn, he dealt me like 19 damage. He posted in my Discord later that he had another game where he dealt like 40 damage on turn 5 or something like that. So that kind of deck exists. I think it's a little bit harder to get together and need some specific pieces, but do be on the lookout for it. But mostly, I think when you're looking at the green cards, you're looking at mid-rangey, late game, casting a bunch of bombs, that kind of stuff. And there's really no better card for that than the card I've mentioned at least 5 times already, Town Greeter. This is the 1 and a green 1/1 that when it enters, you mill 4 cards, and you can put a land from them in your hand. If it was a town, you gain 2 life. This card is phenomenal. This is, I think, green's best common by quite a bit. It's one of the best commons in the set. The rate of playing a 2-mana 1/1 that can jump block, double block, sacrifice, all that kind of stuff, trade with the next one, that draws you a land, puts a bunch of cards in your graveyard, and gains you 2 life sometimes, that's so much for 2 mana. And now, I know one thing about this card is that people are very adverse to milling, right? If they don't have ways to get their cards back. This was a thing in Tarkir as well with Einok Wayfarer, which was one of green's top commons, but people never took it that highly because, if you don't have ways to get your cards back from the graveyard, I know that people are kind of antsy about that. But if you've been around the Magic space or the card game space or, the gaming space for a while, you'll probably hear about the milling fallacy, which is basically to say that it doesn't actually matter that you mill your cards because your deck is in a random order. You didn't lose them, quote unquote. It's not like you're discarding them. It's a feel bad. It's a mental hurdle to get over. It might cause you some psychic damage, but it doesn't impact your win rate whatsoever. Every instance you might mill your 3-4 good cards, but that's random, right? You also might mill some really bad cards you didn't want to draw. So the piece of advice I would say, if you're somebody who goes, okay, I know this is a fallacy and I want to not try to fall into this. I want to stop my lizard brain from going, oh, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad. I'm going to use something that I heard from Sirkovitz. He puts it really in a great way. And the way he puts it is, you're just as likely to mill your good cards as you are to mill towards your good cards, right? So you're just as likely to bin that bomb as you are to mill 3 cards and then draw your bomb the next turn. Another way you can look at it is because your deck is random, it's almost like you were milling from the bottom of your deck instead of the top of your deck. Mathematically, it's just the same thing. And you were never going to see the cards on the bottom of your deck anyways. So yeah, do not let the fear of milling your good cards prevent you from drafting this card highly and playing it in basically every green deck. That's not like a beatdown deck, right? You don't really want this in your aggro deck. I was playing a game last night where I cast Town Greeter on 2 and it drew me 3 cards and gained me 2 life because I saw a town, I took the town, and I binged 2 flashback cards. So yeah, there's that. Other green commons that I like. So there's the Land Cycler. I called that before. Balam T-Rex, 6 mana, 6/6 Trampler. When it enters, you gain 3 life. We've seen this kind of card a lot. It's almost always very good. It's pretty good here. The Gubu Gardener, the 1/3 that taps to add green mana. I usually don't like mana dorks very much unless they make multiple colors or they do something later in the game, like you can sacrifice them for value, or they have Death Touch, or they have some relevance. Or they're 1 mana, they're land or elf. This is the kind of card that we've had in sets previously that I think is pretty overrated. But in this set, I just find you really don't run out of things to do with your mana in your green decks. And that's the way limited Magic's been trending for a while. But I think this set especially, with all the flashback, the expensive cards, I find that I consistently am using the mana from the Gardener every single turn, which makes me a little more willing to draft this card fairly highly. Some other ones, we've got Chocobo Kick. This is just the punch spell that's fairly solid. Precious Wandering is one that I think is pretty easy to overlook, but is pretty good. So this is 2 and a green for an instant. Search your library for a town or a basic. Put it onto the battlefield tapped. You put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So very similar to Combat Tutorial, where it's like, okay, this is in effect 3 mana ramp spell, very clunky, but put a counter, add a counter in the mix. I'm pretty happy about it. It's instant speed. That's kind of nice. Also, you can instant speed trigger your landfall. That matters. If you ever get to go 2-drop attack, they block, you cast Wandering, you win the combat and get a land, you feel phenomenal about that. So yeah, it's been a pretty good fixing tool, I found. Some uncommons here that I'm quite fond of. Very good green uncommons. Saz Chocobo. Single green mana for an 0/1. landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Very, very good threat. Best in the aggressive green decks, like green-red, but even in your slower mid-range decks, like I would always play this card. Another thing I found in this set is it's very, very easy to consistently hit your land drops if you're just taking, a lot of the cards that I just talked about, like the Greeter, Precious Wandering. Often the foil for landfall cards, or kind of their fail state, is you just stop drawing lands, right? And this especially happens in like a red-green landfall aggro deck, because it's not like you're drawing a bunch of cards, and you don't have a bunch of card draw in your red-green decks generally. But in this set, they've done a really good job of enabling the landfall theme. So you have cards like Precious Wandering, like just mentioned. You have cards like Chocobo Kick, the fight spell, which I didn't read out in entirely, but it has Kicker, return a land you control to its owner's hand. So that helps you retrigger your landfall again. Just, a bunch of card draw if you're a slower blue-green deck. So I find that all the landfall cards I have, they trigger almost every turn. And yeah, that makes the Chocobo just all that much better. It's a threat that scales on most turns of the game. Torgal, a Fine Hound. I'd say this is better than a Fine Hound. This is the 1 and a green for a 2/2 that taps out a mana of any color. And whenever you cast your first human spell each turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on that card for each dog and or wolf you control. And Torgal is, of course, one of those. And yeah, there's a lot of humans in the set. So this is a 2-mana 2/2 that taps out a mana of any color that will make your creatures bigger. And that's just great. Next up is Milli Vanilli, Vanille Cheerful Lassie. So this is a 4-mana 3/2. When it enters, mill 2 cards. Then you return a permanent from your graveyard to your hand. Also has this meld text, melds with Fang into like this giant monster. We're not going to go there right now. Cool thing to do if you can do it. But I just want to call this card out as an excellent card on its own. You don't need to be comboing with it. Just 4 mana, 3/2, milling. Again, a lot of cards we talked about today, they just mill. They just put cards in the graveyard. So supporting that theme that I said is very, very turned on. The 8 cards or the multiple cards in the grave. That just happens so easily. But yeah, a Gravedigger that gets back any permanent that fills your grave. There's a point in the format for the first like 3 days or so of playing where I just never won against this card. Every time my opponent cast this card, I just lost in the spot. And this like got back a great thing, or they ground me out with value. It's very, very good to have 2 copies of this card because they loop each other, right? There's no restriction on that. So yeah, don't think you have to be melding for this card to be good. It's just fantastic. And then sort of a controversial one that the 17 land stats don't like very much, but I found to be pretty good in a lot of my decks. So Chocobo Racetrack is 3 green for an artifact with landfall. And when you landfall, you make a Chocobo token. 2/2 with landfall gets +1/+0. So just like I was talking about when talking about Sat's Chocobo, I think if you've got the cards that consistently enable you to hit land drops, this card can be pretty good. Now, it's not very good against the aggro decks. It's not really what you want. But in the value matchups and like the green-black mirrors, this card can just be the thing that puts you over the top, the things that helps you turn the corner, the thing that outvalues your opponent. Because every Town Greeter you draw, every Chocobo Kick you draw, every land that would be kind of dead in the late game turns into a 2/2. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is not a card for every deck, and even in the slower decks, I don't think it's amazing. I think it's a phenomenal sideboard card. Like if you're in a value matchup, you should bring this in for sure. But if you're looking for a bit of grind in your slower decks, I've already been there where I'm like, yeah, I don't have as much top end as I wanted to. I should just play this card. Actually, I was on Nikolai Bolas's YouTube channel. We just recorded a video. He just posted that today, where we were in that exact situation, where we were like this blue-green town deck, where we had some top end, but we kind of felt we needed a little bit more. We played a racetrack, and yeah, it was phenomenal in that deck. It was really, really good at helping to grind out the game. So yeah, go check that out if you're interested in seeing some gameplay with it. But yeah, one that if you're just looking at 17 land stats, I don't think is going to tell the full story, because how good this card is really going to be a function of how many cards you have in your deck that help you hit landfall. And then as I have done for the past few colors, I want to call out you shouldn't pass this card, and a lot of people are passing this card. Esper Origins is a rare that is 1 and a green for a sorcery. You surveil 2 and you gain 2 life. Okay, well, it also has flashback, and then flashback cost is 3 and a green, and if you cast it from your graveyard, you flip it into a Saga creature, and it turns into Summon Esper Madwin, which is a 4/4 that says reveal the top card of your library. If it's a permanent card, put it into your hand, which often draws you a card because you've just surveilled 2. The second chapter is add green. Third chapter is creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. Yeah, this card is phenomenal. Like if you can flip this, which is very easy to do, it's just such a good creature. Milling this feels phenomenal. Yeah, I really can't say enough good things about this card. This is another one of the best rares in the set, and yeah, I've got this past me quite a few times. And we're gonna close things out just by briefly touching on the archetypes in the set and just some thoughts there. So I'm not gonna go super deep for sure. You know, that's something I usually do on later weeks of the format. I also think, like I mentioned before, it's a little bit less important to point out the good archetypes and the bad archetypes. I would even say that you might be doing yourself a disservice right now if you're looking at like, these are the good archetypes I want to get into, these are the not so good ones. Because even the decks that aren't as supported as some others, or maybe aren't as strong, or if you're looking at win rates on 17 lands, or aren't some of the better ones, I think they're all viable. Like, I think literally every single color pair in this set is pretty viable when your seed is right for it. And I can't say that for every set. You know, that doesn't happen every set. There's a lot of sets where I say, you know, 1 or 2 archetypes I basically never draft. But I do really think it is true for this set. Now, if I were to say, what decks do I like drafting, which do I think are the strongest if I had to vote? You know, Buster Sword to my head, which one is the best? I think that green, black, and blue, red are my picks for the top 2 decks. A lot of my matches in Mythic are against these 2 decks, so it seems that a lot of people at the higher ranks agree that this is the case, that they find themselves in these decks a lot too. It's a combo of the themes are very supported, so like green, black, graveyard, recursion, self-mill. You know, I talk so much about how much self-mill is in the set. And red, blue, same thing, kind of very strong cards. Being a blue deck, the theme really working here. I think those are my votes. Also, it's really nice that the 2 best decks, or what I'm calling the 2 best decks here, are 2 completely different colors, like green, black, and blue, red. I don't know, I think that's just pretty good for the format. But just a few other things here, just passing cursory glance at some of the other archetypes. I really like the Towns decks. I think that both the Signposts and Commons, Omega, Heartless Evolution, which is like the 7-mana 8/8 that taps things down and gains life, and Ignis, which is the 3-mana 2/2 that ramps you and makes food. Both these cards are great, but really the thing about the Towns deck is it's the base for a multicolor deck, right? You can get very, very colorful. You know, one thing going in with this set, after coming off of Tarkir, was I was thinking, okay, well, you know, you're gonna have to be a little bit less colorful than you were in Tarkir. And I think that's true, but I often can pick up lands when I want to. I didn't expect that to be the case, and it might not be the case, you know, in a few weeks when people start taking lands appropriately. I could see that. But I really haven't had a problem getting, you know, 7 towns in my deck and having a bunch of good town payoffs. So yeah, that's a space I've been in a lot. Again, just being a blue deck. I've also had a really good time with red-black. This is a deck that I think is very, very synergy-based. Like, red-black is absolutely not a good card pile. It's, you know, all the black cards we talked about in the black card section, Corner by Mages, and the attrition-y cards, the wizard pingy cards. You need to have the specific cards, but those come to you. There's actually quite a fair number of those. Also want to call out Garland, Knight of Cornelia. Phenomenal gold card here. Red-black for a 3/2. That whenever you cast a non-creature, you surveil 1, and then you can cast it from your graveyard for 7 mana. It comes back as a 5/5 flyer. So yeah, this card's just great. Black Waltz number 3. Not really, I think, a great card for this deck. This is the 4-mana 2/2 Death Touch flyer that whenever you cast a non-creature, deals 2 damage to each opponent. I mean, it can be explosive. You know, this is the kind of card I was talking about, cards that you have to untap with to be good. This one, I don't think the juice is quite worth the squeeze. They don't offer you quite enough. Like, it's good when you untap, but not busted. And it is a 4-mana 2/2 with no enter the battlefield effect or no protection. I also think you don't really need this card to be a functional black-red deck. Like, you know, your black-red decks are attrition-y. This is not an attrition card. It's just an individual threat. So, I don't know. I don't think it really fits into the black-red puzzle the way you really want it to. And then white-black, which I think is kind of just an offshoot of red-black in a lot of ways. Maybe attacks a little more often than red-black does. Red-black's kind of happy to just, like, sit back, cast some removal, cast some card filtering. You know, white-black might be attacking a little more often. But generally, I think doing fairly similar things. And yeah, like, I think those are the ones I really want to call out. I feel like I have something to say about them. In the coming weeks, we're going to dive deeper on these archetypes, of course, get to the real nitty gritty. And yeah, I know I think it's not most of what I have to say about this format, but it's most of what I'm going to say about this format for today. I've been recording like almost 6 hours at this point, and you know, I'm tired, but I really feel like I could talk more about this format. I'm really excited to start making more content for it. If you enjoyed, by the way, at this point, and you're still here on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out the Patreon as well, like I mentioned before. And yeah, I look forward to drafting this format more. I hope you're enjoying it. I've heard a lot of people, you know, say they've really enjoyed it so far. Heard a lot of other people say they're having a hard time, but they're still, you know, having fun, and that's always a good sign too. So thank you for watching and listening. We will see you next time. Bye, everybody.